Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Whalley, an environmental specialist at Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. My presentation today is on the use of innovative technology to help accelerate the consenting process for offshore wind. Now, this statement alone highlights the real need for changes in the consenting process for offshore wind. It takes about 2 years to construct a wind farm, yet it takes about 5 years to achieve consent, but it's often longer. Last July, the Catapult released a report on accelerating offshore wind. It explores how smart technology could streamline the data gathering, analysis and decision making to help accelerate the consenting process. So why do we need a change to the current methods used to conduct the environmental surveys? Our challenge is how do we minimise our impact on the environment as we embark on this global energy transformation. Today's monitoring programmes are limited by high costs and are not optimally designed for a robust and proper assessment of the present ecological and environmental status and associated pressures. Low carbon, efficient and time relevant monitoring methods are needed to understand the impacts and better protect the sea. Uncertainty during the consenting process is a major issue for developers. It is therefore crucial to manage the risks and reduce the uncertainty so that we can support a shorter project timeline from initial concept to commercial operation. Developers do not need more barriers and bottlenecks in the way when facing spiralling costs, supply chain issues and the lack of government support. Now, here are some examples of emerging innovative technology and digital solutions that could be used during the pre-application stage and for post-consent monitoring. These are monitoring platforms such as uncrewed surface vessels and drones, and sensor technology such as high-definition cameras and passive acoustic arrays. Combining the integrated platform and sensor with digitalisation can provide a fully autonomous monitoring system. eDNA has emerged as a revolutionary tool for cost-effective, sensitive, non-invasive species monitoring, and a growing number of studies have successfully implemented this approach for the detection and identification of marine mammals and fish. Now, there are limitations to these technologies, but through further R&D, these issues are likely to be resolved. But one of the biggest headaches to the new technology is the current regulatory barriers. Standards and regulations lag behind the industry's rapid pace of innovation. For autonomous surface vehicles, the lack of human oversight means that this type of technology must earn the confidence of the maritime community. By contrast, autonomous underwater vehicles are not currently considered ships under English law, which means that maritime standards do not apply. Unmanned aerial vehicles need to be operated within visual line of sight. The Civil Aviation Authority is developing drone laws to enable operators to fly beyond visual line of sight. We have the potential for reduced emissions and costs, improve safety and enhanced environmental monitoring with these technologies, but we need the clear regulations to proceed. This slide shows some of the work that's being done to highlight the benefits of using smart technology to enhance data gathering and increase our knowledge of the impacts associated with offshore wind. For example, Watt and Fellenworsted have been doing some great work in collecting data to further our knowledge of bird activity around offshore wind farms by using high-definition cameras on radar, along with computer vision and AI technology. These for autonomous underwater and surface vehicles are increasingly being used as well for research relating to offshore wind. Now I'll talk to you about ORE Catapult's role. Now, there is a need for more research that takes advantage of innovative technologies to better understand the functioning of the UK marine ecosystems within which large-scale offshore wind deployment is situated. A sound evidence base is essential to inform policy and marine management responses and provide confidence to the regulator on guidance and data requirements for project-level environmental impact assessments and habitat regulation assessments. And Catapult's new project, which is titled Accelerating Consenting for Offshore Renewables Deployment, or ACCORD, will demonstrate the speed and accuracy of innovative technologies to drive change in gathering and processing data. We will trial and test automated data processing software that is capable of transmitting information in near real time. We'll engage with the SNCBs and policymakers to ensure that new technologies can be confidently incorporated into EIAs and post-consent monitoring plans. We'll engage with developers, scientists and marine stakeholders to establish a network of innovators working in developing marine monitoring technology. And ultimately, we want to de-risk the consenting process by creating greater certainty with the data collection. Our key focus areas will be on new sensor technologies, platforms, automated data processing, and driving a step change in the current regulatory landscape. We'll do this by trialling and testing the technology and conducting offshore demonstrations at one of our own test sites, as well as using Smart Sound, which is based in Plymouth. We'll also make use of the Catapult's new Digital Autonomous and Robotics Engineering Centre, which is based in Blythe, and we're in the process of planning a counterfactual demonstration at a pre-consented site in the Celtic Sea, where more traditional methods were used to conduct the baseline surveys, and we will compare those results with the evidence gathered from using new smarter technology. One final note, by adopting smart technology, we can better protect our marine environment whilst accelerating the rollout of offshore wind. Today, there is an increasing demand for data and transparency in decision making, and marine data must be detailed, precise, and readily available. Marine infrastructure projects and offshore energy are just a few areas where humans will impact marine ecosystems. However, when impacting, we need to protect and improve the marine ecosystems to the best of our ability. And we should be looking to new technologies to ensure they optimise both exploitation and protection. In order to achieve real progress, we need to develop the governance and cooperative mechanisms to harness the emerging technology to deliver on the goal of generating the knowledge that is required to sustain oceans into the future and ensure the sustainable development of offshore wind farms. There is no doubt that traditional methods provide value, but it is important to highlight the need for updating marine monitoring and acknowledging the value that new technologies provide. The Catapult has the expertise to support and facilitate this transformation in data gathering. Thank you so much for listening.
Hello, my name's Joe Deimel. I'm an environmental advisor at SSE Renewables, and this presentation is a quick overview of some work we've been doing using machine learning to monitor puffins. So by way of some background, this work is associated with Beatrice Offshore Wind Farm, which is an 84 turbine site in the Moray Firth, which became fully operational in June 2019. During the EIA for the project, puffin was identified as a species of concern, with specific questions around whether the operational wind farm would have effects on nearby breeding populations. So various options for monitoring the nearby puffin colonies were discussed. There were difficulties using conventional techniques such as censusing because puffins are sparsely distributed within this SPA. An early stage photo ID was identified as a possible technique to monitor the populations. And then in 2020, SSE started building technology links with Microsoft and their subcontractor Avanade, and these looked like a suitable opportunity to carry out population monitoring through machine learning analysis of video footage. So following further discussions with MFRAG, it was decided that a colony stack at Dunbeath within the East Caithness Cliffs SPA would be a suitable monitoring site. This colony had previously been monitored using stills photography as part of the University of Aberdeen master's thesis, so the colony was quite well understood already, and there was an opportunity to install the needed monitoring equipment in a field on the landward side of the stack. This slide here shows the colony stack in relation, well, within the East Caithness Cliffs SPA and directly onshore from Beatrice Offshore Wind Farm. So before proceeding with deployment at Dunbeath, we carried out a proof of concept trial on the Isle of May. In 2021, this was successful at capturing video footage, and an initial machine learning model based on You Only Look Once algorithm was developed using puffin colony video footage available online, which was footage collected at ScotMER and Alderney. This model was then applied to the footage captured at the Isle of May and was successful at detecting puffins, and this gave the confirmation we needed for proceeding with deployment at Dunbeath. This slide gives an overview of a yellow model. I won't go into details here, but if you have any questions, please do get in touch. So in November 2022, we went ahead with deployment of an array of 4 cameras at Dunbeath. This clip here shows the camera in relation to the colony stack we're just panning around to at the moment. The background wind effect there just shows how large the populations can be, particularly during the winter, and therefore the cameras were installed in marine grade housing. And this here, just in the center of the screen there, is the colony stack that we're looking at. So the collected video data was streamed to the cloud through the 4G mobile data network. The first phase of video capture was carried out during the 2023 breeding season from the 18th of March to 12th of August. So initial review and processing of the data. So during manual review of the footage, the first puffin to arrive at the colony stack was detected. This was on the 28th of March, and the puffin just arrived on the colony area on the left of the frame there. We were also able to work out the last puffin to leave, which was on the 29th of July. They're in the center of the frame, just there, and they'll be leaving in the next few seconds. So this just demonstrated the value of having ongoing video monitoring, because we're able to pick up details such as first and last attendance at the colony. So initial training of a model based on the 2023 data is currently underway. This is being based on approximately 1,900 sample data frames taken from video, largely from Dunbeath, some from the Isle of May, and some from data taken from the internet, from Alderney, ScotMER, and other locations. And there are some control frames within the model development that don't have puffin imagery. So these frames, 3 from Dunbeath, 1 from the Isle of May, just show bounding boxes that have been manually drawn around the puffins to label them as part of model development. So frames were selected that had different daylight conditions, such as sunshine, fog, or rain, and backgrounds including grass, no grass, flowers, cliffs, other bird species in shot. So basically trying to give a good variety to train the model here. This is a close-up of a still from Dunbeath, and the next one shows bounding boxes that have been drawn around the puffins within the image there. So comparing the labeled boxes from Dunbeath and Isle of May, the resolution at Isle of May was higher, the cameras were closer, but what we found was the same patterns could be picked up, enabling detection of puffins. So in sort of broad terms, we're looking at white, black, white banding that applied to Isle of May as well as to Dunbeath. And for next steps, we're going to complete model development at Dunbeath based on 2023. Currently developing model version 1. We'll then verify this and then move on to model version 2 using further data from Dunbeath. Once that's then verified, we'll look to apply that model for data collected in the 2024 breeding season. We're also looking to readjust the camera positions to have better coverage of the central grassy area of the stack where puffins have been confirmed as monitoring. So cameras 3 and 4 will be repositioned to focus on that central band. So all 4 cameras will be focusing on the area where puffins are nesting. And we'll also extend the recording hours. So in 2023, to manage data volumes, we recorded between 6 AM and 8 PM, but we'll extend that to all daylight hours. And I'd just like to thank the various organisations and individuals who've helped with this project. And again, just to say, if you have any questions, please get in touch with me, joseph.deimel@sse.com. Many thanks.
Hello there. My name is Matthew Witt. I'm from the University of Exeter, and for this section of ScotMER in the innovation section, I was asked if I could talk about recent innovations in cameras for marine biodiversity census. Our experience with cameras in my research group over the past 15 years has been quite varied, and we've tried to apply them to a whole range of topics in that kind of broader scope of ecology. And here are just a few pictures of the types of applications we've tried cameras with. Top left, this is a thermal imaging camera where we've tried to do work to look at things such as heat balance and animals. We've tried to use cameras to get that unique point of view perspective on how animals move and behave and react to their environments. And here, the red camera on the left is an example of a towed camera system used on basking sharks, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Top right-hand corner, this is a robotic system implemented with cameras to try and follow animals in real time to understand their environment. But these systems can be used to do transects of the seabed too. We've used cameras in the bottom right here to look at catch accumulation rates around man-made structures in the sea to see whether things such as rock armoring increases, catch rates of crabs and lobsters and those types of organisms. And the real workhorse though of cameras in the marine environment in more recent years has been BRUVs, the baited remote underwater video system. And I've got some examples of both a kind of a single camera BRUV here in this bottom picture and the more recent stereo BRUV systems over on the right here that I'll talk more about too. So I'm going to talk now about kind of 3 or 4 of the more dominant uses of cameras that have been used in the marine environment to gain information about things such as habitat structure. And this is the towed camera system. This is really pioneered in the UK, at least by Emma Sheehan. There's a place on the left-hand side. But really, these camera systems are about collecting rapid information across large areas of the seabed for habitat description. They're really best for describing habitat type, but they can also help with things such as sessile organisms, but they're not so great for use on mobile organisms, as the cameras kind of scare animals off. And you can see 2 laser beams here, so it's easy to implement measuring systems in this approach too. I've put down in the bottom of all of the examples, but for this one, this is Emma Sheehan's kind of original paper of bringing this system to the UK to do a broad scale habitat assessment. You can look at Emma's paper in Google Scholar and go from that to find more recent applications of these systems, both in the Northeast Atlantic and globally. The next system, and maybe perhaps the more classic one, is the drop camera system. So a bit like Emma's system, but with a camera in a frame, and it's just lowered to the seabed and a static image is taken. This was certainly the method to do it before high definition and very high frame rates became available, where you could do screen grabs on those approaches and still get very good quality. But still, the drop camera system is the real workhorse. You lower it to seabed, take an image, lift it slightly off the seabed again, move forward a few more meters, take the next image. And on the left-hand side, I'm just showing you a picture from one of our research papers that's used drop camera systems to look at efficacy of marine protected areas and whether or not cessation of fisheries does indeed allow recovery of sessile organisms in those environments. And for this area in the southwest around Eddystone Lighthouse, we could certainly see the seabed recovering up to 5 years after trawling activity for scallops was or dredging was prohibited. Next are animal-borne cameras. I'm reflecting on our own experiences here, but these have been used on a whole range of species now, notably kind of seabirds. They've been really insightful for and have provided lots of new knowledge about how those animals interact with human activity, but they can be used on sharks, as we've done, but also on turtles, which I did for a long time ago in my PhD with a colleague, and also seals and sea lions. And the cameras we first put on turtles actually came from the seal and sea lion sector. Here, I'm just going to show you a quick video of what point of view cameras allow. So this is us setting up a tether system, and this video data were gathered from this red camera on the left. But this point of view approach is really important. You can gather information around depth and temperature of these animals from other sensors, but you never quite know what's going on. You don't know the context in which those movements are being made. And these new camera systems, though, are incredibly helpful and reveal, certainly in this example with basking sharks in the Hebrides, the kind of huge amount of time that they actually spend on the seabed, but they also reveal behaviours such as courtship or pre-courtship, which we had never seen before. We always thought was probably happening, but we didn't have kind of definitive evidence of it. But here, where you can see such large animals in such tight groups, is certainly indicative of behaviours that suggest some pre-courtship behaviour. You can also fit cameras onto robotics, like I mentioned at the beginning. Here's the Remus. This was an instrument owned by Woods Hole in the US, but there are variants of the Remus also in Scotland at SAMS. And the nose cone of this device is fitted with a forward, left, upwards, downwards, and rightward looking camera systems. These can operate for up to 6 to 8 hours, following an animal around autonomously. There's a beacon fitted to the animal too, and the robotic system is making it to the mind how to follow that animal with the basic parameters set in it to avoid collision. These systems have their merits. They also have their downfall. I'd argue probably the point of view towed systems might actually be better, but they've been used on a range of species now and have increased our knowledge about what these animals do when we can't see them subsurface. going to spend the rest of the time talking about BRUVs. These have become really pivotal in marine ecological research, and their innovative applications being driven by things like AI, machine learning. This is a paper that we use BRUVs to look at the impacts of underwater of wave farms. Sorry, and then here you can see in this video, they're very good systems for allowing you to enumerate pseudo abundance of organisms. And here you can see small dabs, lamanda, haddocks coming in, and this is all gathered at EMEC off the west coast of Whalley. And the left-hand side here are those camera systems. We had 6 of them. They're easy enough to deploy. You can do 6 at a time, so you get very high levels of replication quite quickly for rather minimal cost in terms of hiring boats. So let's now go through BRUVs more closely. So they can be really simple. Here are some just simple frames that were made for a Caribbean project. These are just threaded pipe put together, and either a GoPro or a NoPro put on these to gather information. You have more advanced ones like the ones we had developed in the mid-2000s when we kind of brought BRUVs to the kind of Northeast Atlantic environment, through to more complex ones. These are stereo BRUVs that we now use on the Prepared project in the northern North Sea wind farms. These stereo systems allow you to measure animals as well as count them. Through to this picture here. So these are camera systems we've had commissioned for the Prepared. They're being built in the US. They've got timers, schedulers, white light, red light, variable intensity, stereo camera vision, with and without bait systems, acoustic releases to get them off from very deep environments where you don't want to use ropes to the surface, VHF beacons to help relocation once they popped off on the seabed, satellite tracking in case of premature failure in them coming up. So they're really quite advanced systems now. So, but looking back at the more kind of simpler BRUV systems, they all need cameras, which are highlighted here. So this is a stereo BRUV system used mid-water. They all need a bait canister of some sort because you need to attract animals into the field of view so that you can count them. And they all need some form of flotation at the surface, unless you're using the systems which I just spoke about with acoustic releases. So you always need some kind of buoyant marker at the surface. And in this mid-water application I'm showing this picture, you can see the rope running up to the surface. And bottom right is the same camera system, but with legs on, so you can put it onto the seabed. And you'll see that there's quite a lot of weight on these systems because these are being used in the Northeast Atlantic, where sea state is large and you can't just dive down in a pair of board shorts to go get it. These all need to be hauled up by boat. So like I say, they all need at least 1 or 2 cameras. They all need a bait arm and a canister of some sort, surface and flotation markers, but the deployment duration is variable, and it's really based on the application. In pelagic systems like the picture here, you'll need to soak for a couple of hours because the density of pelagic organisms is much less than on the seabed. And in seabed systems, you might want to do very short soaks, very short periods of time on the seabed, because you don't really want to attract in animals from a long way away, because that's not really then potentially reflecting of the biodiversity you have in the immediate area. So what type of data can you get from BRUVs? Well, you can get species lists, which seems like the most obvious. You can, species lists. You can get pseudo abundances of animals, which we call the max N, which is the maximum number of any one species in a frame grab at any one time. And that assures that you don't accidentally do double counting, but it's a very conservative estimate. You can get insight into community composition, sex of animals where possible. Earlier in the video that's playing, you saw a lesser spotted cat shark. It's possible to sex those. And you can use the systems ranging from truly randomized rapid census through to quite structured experimental designs to look at the impacts of man-made structures, for example. So what are the limitations of the BRUVs and how far we can push them? Well, the main limitation is that you have to use bait, and organisms that you're counting will all have some degree of specificity to the bait. You also typically in the Northeast Atlantic need to use light, and for some organisms that's attracting, and for other organisms that will repel them. And so the systems I'm showing you here, which I mentioned earlier, have all been designed so that we can work through some of those challenges in the science of using BRUVs to better understand what are the impacts of light, white light, red light, what are the impacts of bait, Can you do these surveys without bait? If you do, how much longer do cameras need to soak for? New into the scene are these things called catch cam. These have been designed to look at impacts of fishing nets, but actually they're at a price point now, £6,000 or £7,000, and at a depth rating of nearly down to 1,000 meters with accompanying red and white lights. That actually they're becoming a bit like the equivalent of GoPros in terms of their cost and price point for doing some more of the extreme type BRUV work. But we've also been experimenting with BRUV systems, top right here, that have got machine learning and AI on board. So they're actually only recording when they see large organisms move into the field of view. So I think there's still quite a bit of scope now for BRUVs, and there's even more scope for data analytics. How do we use machine learning now to get through the vast amounts of data? Given these systems have become cheaper, the batteries are better, the memory can be extended up into the many terabytes. It's very easy to collect lots of data, but now we need to kind of think more about how analytics can help us get through those data more quickly. If this kind of area of marine science interests you, we wrote a review paper some years ago now, 2016, about camera technologies. You might want to have a look at that paper and then use that in Google Scholar and extend your search into perhaps more recent applications of camera technologies. Thank you very much.